it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Great.
This is episode 6 of Wild Minds with Cash Terry. Cash, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I'm just turned 60. I'm a professional in the produce world. I actually had moved here from Texas about 3 years ago, currently in Colorado Springs. Raised my 2 kids, started over in life somewhat about, roughly right at 20 years ago, 21 years ago, honestly. And had the 2 kids to take care of. That was rough. I got through all that. Had to start over life basically after a tough divorce and just rebuilt everything, got everybody off on the right foot. And then it was time for me to more or less just find myself. And always have been somewhat an adrenaline junkie, I guess would be the right way to put it. Whether it's fast cars, but now this last probably 8 years, I've found myself, basically doing things outdoors, mountain biking, road biking, but mainly hiking and trying to get more into technical climbing. Those activities have kind of replaced some really unhealthy choices I used to make going back about 20 something years ago and prior to that, which got me into a lot of trouble and just really wasn't working out in life. And I use these outdoors now and stuff to replace that unhealthy activity with a healthy lifestyle, and the outdoors is a huge part of that. When I get out there outside and do these big hikes and climbs and such, what it does for me really is just it's like a reset. Just kind of recenters me, helps me with my focus. I can have a rough work week and get outside and everything is okay and I'm good to go, after that.
Yeah, so when you lived in Lubbock, you were already into like road biking and stuff, weren't you?
Yeah, I did that. Well, again, it kind of goes back to the adrenaline junkie thing. I love the thrill and the speed of being on a bike, sometimes outside towards not Idalou, but Slayton. You go down the canyon on Highway
Mm-hmm.
400. There's nothing like going 50 miles an hour on a tire that's 30 centimeters or 23 centimeters wide. It just
Yeah.
goes back to that thing, kind of a thrill seeker thing, which I looked at that as much healthier than what I used to do prior to that,
Yeah.
i.e. substance abuse issues. And it was healthy. It kept me in shape. As we age, we start hopefully looking for things like that. But yeah, the road biking in Lubbock. And then that just kind of led into the whole mountain thing and hiking and stuff.
So you may not have a real clear answer to this, but when you lived in Lubbock, how did you keep yourself active? Because I think we share the same kind of general feeling that Lubbock isn't particularly a very outdoors oriented place. Like they don't have bike lanes in a lot of places, and like
True.
it's just not it's not very well laid out and geared towards outdoorsy people.
Not at all. No.
So how did you deal with that when you lived here?
Well, I would try, to honestly get out of Lubbock as often as I could, like the rides to Slayton out in the country, rides like that. Sometimes I would go to Cloudcroft, New Mexico area and ride up there and actually hike. And that's kind of where I started the whole hiking thing. I still like to ride the bikes and always have, but in old relationship, we would go up to Cloudcroft and do hikes up there, Paladuro Canyon, Caprock Canyon, or some places near Lubbock that I would go to facilitate what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's cool.
But Lubbock itself, it's not very conducive to the things I was doing, the activities that I did to be outdoors. Because honestly, there's not much to do outdoors there.
Yeah. And also in the summer, it's just too hot to be outdoors. It's like,
Oh yeah,
triple digit heat, and it's pretty difficult to
yeah,
be out there unless you're out there really early in the morning, and sometimes even then it's still already
oh
hot.
yeah. That and the blowing dirt.
Yes, that too.
Lubbock.
You're near constant exfoliation when you're outside. Yeah. So what brought you to Colorado? How did you get started with mountain climbing and that whole thing in Colorado?
Well, an old girlfriend I had lived in Alaska, and while she was there, lived there twice. She really got into the hiking and everything, and I had just started the whole road bike thing. I guess my whole perspective on life at that time, this is about 13 years ago, what was changing. You know, the kids were, if not already, had left the house. So I was kind of pivoting back towards myself, looking inward, trying to get things right for myself now. And that included physical activities outdoors, the riding, and then she had introduced me to hiking. And we would go to New Mexico quite a bit, and made one or two trips up to Colorado to visit family and such of hers. And we would work in a hike or two during those trips. And it just opened my eyes, and it made me harken back to when I was a kid in the back of mom and dad's cars. Every summer, my dad would take us all on a week-long vacation. Frequently, it was Colorado or Wyoming, and I would be in the back seat just looking up at the mountains, the top of the mountains, and I would always wonder to myself, what's it like up there on top? You know, what's the environment like? How does it feel and stuff like that? So fast forward to roughly 10 years ago, when I started doing some hikes and such, I found out what that felt like. And it was really profound to be up on top, seeing things not many people see, to feel the way not many people feel, albeit exhausting at times. But it would kind of
Yeah.
elevate me to a different mindset, you know, and it's pretty special, you know. When you come down, you know, you remember all these things, what you saw and how you felt while you were doing these activities, somewhat strenuous, and it really would stick to you, and just a very deep way it would like reset my buttons, you know.
Yeah.
But back to your question here. While I was hiking up here, you know, it clicked that I used to look at the top of the mountains from the back seat of the car on vacation, and I just couldn't get enough, you know. So I kind of went crazy. I've always overdone things, you know, whether it was car racing or illicit activities way back that I thankful God I grew out of. But I've always had a habit of kind of just going hog wild per se on things. And so I would just, gosh, until I moved to Colorado 3 years ago, for the 6 years prior to that, I used every bit of vacation every summer to come up here and hike and climb. And it initially started out in the search for the Colorado 14ers, of which there's 58 of those. And I've got one left that I'm going to do next weekend if Mother Nature cooperates. But along that journey, my skills progressed. I got to where I could do higher mileage days and elevation game, and I just started doing more technical climbs, progressing in skills and such. And I could have finished these 14ers probably a year or two ago, but I figured out the 12ers and 13ers that are pretty sketchy. There's a lot less people, like what I did yesterday. There's really no trail, and just I really kind of got sidetracked on, you know, pushing things to the limit and progressing my skills on those kind of peaks. But yeah, I moved to Colorado 3 years ago, and it's been a joy ever since.
How did moving to Colorado and being closer to those activities and being able to do them more often, how do you think that affected you, like, emotionally and mentally?
Very profoundly. You know, it's kind of helped me, the old cliche term, find myself, you know, to a great extent. Just having all this in your own backyard and not having to drive 8 or 10 hours, using up all of your vacation. In fact, since I've lived here, I've struggled to use up my vacation. My employer gets upset because I have to use it by the end of May every year. It's my anniversary date at work. And so, what I've done the last 3 years is take 3 or 4 day weekends consecutively for like 2 or 3 months to use up my time. And they're like, wish you wouldn't do this. But backtrack to your question. Like I said, it's kind of helped me find myself, which really translates into just pure joy. which helps in how I do my profession, relationship wise. I just feel more centered and at ease, and I don't experience these depressive weeks when I lived in Lubbock, when I would have to go back there because all I would think about then was the joy I experienced while I was up here. I guess in short, it's pretty cool to live where you used to always go for vacation. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just really cool. It's profound. It's translated into joy and happiness, and that trickles down into everything. The positivity is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, totally. You know, we often talk about how profound the experience of being on a peak that high is, and the feelings that we get from overcoming the adversity involved. And I wonder if you can share a story of one of the most profound,
Ooh.
doesn't have to be a climb, it could be anything, but do you have an experience that really stands out in your mind as being life changing?
Hmm. Great question.
I should have gotten you these questions in advance, sorry.
No, it's all good. I tell you what, it was a little over a year ago. It was just a spur of the moment climb I've got actually a couple of friends that are dirt baggers. They pretty much just live in their car, Jeep, and travel. And I got really close to this one gentleman named Noah. And it was a spur of the moment last September. I just called him up and said, "Hey, bro, let's go do this climb of Capitol Peak." And Capitol Peak is known as like supposed to be the most dangerous, sketchy, technical climb of the 14ers, the 14,000 foot peaks in Colorado. So Noah said, "I'm down. Let's do it." And this is a peak a lot of people will like get a guide for. I mean, this was like a 5 day notice, and we met. He hiked into the lake under the peak. I got there the same day, about 2 hours later. And the day that we hiked in and made camp at the lake under the summit, under the peak, there was a young lady up there, and she was from Denver. It's a well documented thing here, but it was her last summit of the 58 14er. She was going to be finished that day, and she actually fell 900 feet. Um,
Oh
Again,
my
we did not
gosh.
see it, but while we were at camp that day, she had fell 900 feet and obviously perished. Uh, and we saw the helicopters flying around the peak all afternoon, and they finally located her. And we actually saw, and I'm not trying to be morbid or anything, but she's suspended in the gurney, hanging under the helicopter, and they're flying her out, her body. And that kind of shook Noah and I to the core. It was really somber. And what it did was we got up at 3 the next morning to summit, and it really had us focused.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just so focused, and that saps a lot of energy out of you. And from our camp to the summit and back is barely, like, I don't know, maybe a 3 mile round trip. But this mountain is so technical and dangerous that took us like probably, I think it was about 10 hours just to do that little bit of mileage, which is kind of normal, if you're moving quick and everything.
Yeah.
But there's some sections on that mountain, including where she had fallen, that are just really known to be kind of death traps, and you just got to stay very focused. One is called the knife edge, and it's about the length of a basketball court, and it's just a knife edge like this with about a 2,200 foot drop on each side. And some people, crazier than I, they'll kind of walk across it, but like 95% of the people, you just got to kind of butt scoot across this.
Yeah.
And then the area after that is just so loose and steep. That's where most of the accidents happen. But it was just that whole weekend experience, I guess, to answer your question. That was what was so profound and life changing. Maybe not really a stretch, but it just put into my mind how chasing these things can actually cost you your life, but yet at the same time, it's such a deadly beauty that you're looking at and that you're wanting to experience. Touching the rock, just feeling how the rock feels, how it's cold or warm, and the way it radiates, and just being really in tune with this stuff. And
Yeah.
on such a majestic mountain that's just way back there in the woods. And it's just, it makes you change your perspective to just how precious life is and how rare it is to experience some of these things we do up there. You know, that can
Yeah.
actually cost, it could cost you your life, you know, and it's a blessing though to be able to do that.
Yeah. I read so many stories of climbers who have accidents, and I've actually had dreams of myself having accidents similar to things like that. And I think, sometimes my dreams make me more aware and focused than
Yeah.
anything else, because they're so vivid and real. And I've had dreams. I had a dream where I was struck by lightning,
Oh my goodness.
and I've also had a dream where I fell. And
Wow.
that particular dream, like, I think about this every time I read a story about a climber who falls. And in that particular dream, I remember thinking, as soon as I slipped and started to fall, I remember thinking I should have taken more time.
Yeah.
Instead of rushing it. And I basically was thinking that thought as I fell to my death.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
it's things like that, that I guess make me more focused when I'm out there, but also more appreciative of things. So kind of similar as to what
Well,
you said.
yeah, appreciating that you're able to be out there primarily,
Yeah.
and then just appreciating the environment that you're in, you know, and how we need to take care of it, and all sorts of things like that. But yeah, the whole falling thing is that made me flash in my mind. I had a few moments yesterday. It was probably, it seemed like an eternity, but it was probably in reality not even 5 minutes. I found myself in a real sketchy situation. It was some class 4 climbing I had to do to get out of it. I veered off to the right side of this ridge I was on. It was some semi-technical stuff, but that put me on the north side of the mountain, and I was probably 40 feet under the summit ridge trying to get up to the top again, and found myself in some snow, some recent snow, which really hampered my traction. And some of the rock was loose, and there was a rock I was going to use as a handhold to pull myself up as I climbed up towards the summit ridge, and the whole rock gave way. And I mean, I turned and watched it fall probably for 1,000 feet. Just, and by the time it went out of sight, this big rock that was probably a third of the size of my whole body had just fragmented by bouncing on its way down, and just shattered into probably 100 pieces. And every time it would hit and bounce off on its way down, you could just see the pieces flying. And I don't know, it was a close call, but it wasn't. I guess after a while, you kind of get tempered with things like that to where they don't bother you, and that's why you do test
Yeah.
all your hand and footholds. You learn that from experience, but it just really reminded me, why I do what I do, but more importantly, at least at that moment, is how I do what I do. I mean, you don't want to perish, and you want to enjoy these profound moments that change your life's perspective, but you've got to do it in the proper parameters, to not be a statistic. But it was a sketchy few minutes. And what's weird is those, like I said, it was probably only not even 5 minutes until I got onto better ground, safer ground. But it's like time stands still kind of in those things. It seemed to be a lot longer than it really was in reality.
Do you get that same adrenaline rush and that same sense of profound, like, reminder that life is precious with other activities other than climbing?
Not to the same great extent, but yes, I do. Sometimes the mountain biking, which moving to Colorado, I've gotten into that. And sometimes, yeah, when you're just flying downhill, and you catch air, and and you're flying through the air until you hit ground, and stuff like that. Yeah, I do, and I'm just grateful that I'm able to do these things. That, and again, I like car racing, so currently my car needs some work done to it before I can do that again. It's been in the garage over a year, But that too, I mean, it just goes back to the adrenaline thing.
Yeah. So do you want to tell any more 14er stories?
The Chicago Basin stuff is just really epic and magical. Uh,
Yeah.
been there twice. The objective there in Chicago Basin, you get on the Durango Silverton train. They're in Durango, halfway up, and you're going parallel to the Animas River the whole time. And there's a stop halfway up where you get off the train and you hike east into Chicago Basin. And the objective primarily is there's 414ers in that basin. It's like a whole nother world because you're already on the train 2 hours moving away from civilization. And then you get on the ground at Needleton Stop, is what it's called, and hike about 6 or 7 miles east from that. And I mean, you're already starting way desolate in the middle of the wilderness. And then you hike those 7 miles and you're just that much more removed. And it's just a very magical area. And we've been there twice. The views are incredible. You're in this very high basin surrounded by all these mountains. There's water flowing everywhere. In the summer, it's just so lush and green. And the place is almost overran with mountain goats. And I've got a video the first time we went up there. We're sitting at camp eating, and here they come. I counted, I think it was 12 or 13 mountain goats I recorded just walking right through our camp. There was about 4 or 5 little babies, and they're really cute and all that. But the thing is, those goats, you know, they're after you. They see people, and they're thinking salt, and they're waiting for people to pee. Is what they are doing.
Yep.
So they get the salt out of licking your urine. But it's just I don't know. Those goats are like just a layer of the magic in these places. And then you camp. You get up the next morning, and kind of some of the things we touched on earlier. You're doing some everything there is class 3 and 4. All the climbs, somewhat technical, and you're just up there in the middle of nowhere doing this really cool stuff that not many people are doing, and the things you see again. It's just the whole package, you know. I mean, just being so far out there in the San Juans. And I think on your Colorado Trail, you probably hiked just north of that, uh,
Yeah.
Chicago Basin area, and I think it's called the Grenadiers. Uh, and it's amazing. And thankfully, in my pursuit of the Centennials, which are the 100 tallest, I'm at 81 or 82 of those done now. There's one that I orphaned there that I've got to go back, Jupiter Peak. So I get to go back to Chicago Basin. That'll be cool.
That's cool. Yeah, you left it on purpose so you'd have a reason to go back, right?
Uh,
as if you need a reason.
Probably, you know, not consciously, maybe subconsciously that happened. But
Yeah.
it's such a cool area. And I've learned of a basin just next to it called Ruby Basin, which is just northwest of Chicago Basin. It's just really these majestic 13ers there. So with that being said, that means it's going to be even more primitive, more pristine, because there are no 14ers there and less people, yada, yada, yada. So I look forward to that in my pursuit of the 13ers now. So yeah,
cool.
That'll be a cool trip.
Have you ever had any encounters with wildlife that were particularly memorable in a positive or negative way?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me some stories, Cash.
Boy, I got 2, and they both involve mountain lions. It was early spring. Everything was covered in snow near Silverton, Colorado, Ice Lakes Basin, another magical area. I failed on my attempt. The snow was too deep, but I heard a mountain lion that day. I did not see him or her, but I heard the roar, and it just like reverbed off the cliff walls, made the hair stand up on my arms.
Wow.
More memorable was it was right after I moved here. I believe it would have been August or early September of 2020. Mount Lindsay near Alamosa. They're in the Blanca subgroup of the Sangre de Cristos. And I got up that morning, probably about 3 or 4 a.m., to start the climb, the hike in, to the base of the peak and climb. And probably about a mile south of my camp, there was this big open area, like a giant open meadow. And I was crossing that on the trail. And I just happened to glance back in the trees, which were maybe 100 yards from me in this big open meadow that is literally like 3/4 of a mile long. And I saw this pair of eyes that they were amber colored and they were glowing because, again, it's like 4 a.m. and my headlamp hit these eyes and the reflection. But I knew it was a big cat because the color of the eyes, and the eyes like dipped, like how a cat, they dip their eyes when they look down.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, holy cow. And so I just started making a lot of noise and stuff like that, being loud, singing on the trail, whatever. It was scary. And for about the next probably 30 or 40 minutes, I would look back from time to time. And these glowing amber eyes that I knew were a cat, they were staying with me. The thing was tracking me. And so I stopped. I had a pretty good sized knife in my backpack, and I pulled it out. It's like a lock blade. So I opened it up. So here I am at 4:30 a.m. in the morning in the dark, going down the trail with this knife in my hand, just like, no, don't let anything happen. And the thing was tracking me still, through the trees. And luckily, like I said, after 30 or 40 minutes, the sun started coming up and I left tree line about the same time. And that was that. But it was pretty weird being tracked by a lion. That was kind of
yeah,
it kept you on your toes for sure. A little bit of anxiety.
yeah.
Oh, the eagle last weekend. That was cool.
Oh yeah. Tell that story.
Yeah, well, we're on the high ridge, probably at 13,000 feet between Mount Oklahoma and Mount Massive, climbing up this exposed fin on the ridge, somewhat technical. And I'm videotaping my climbing partner of that day. And I was kind of standing perched on a precarious spot on top of the ridge. And I see something out of the corner of my eye, and I keep the camera focused on my partner. But I look with my head, and it's a huge bald eagle that just flies right by us. Again, we're like at 13,000 feet. It was really cool. I've seen an eagle before out climbing. One scared me once, just jumping off a tree right in front of me. And the way when they jump off the limbs, they like go down and then their wings open up and then they soar up. And
and they're big,
huge.
too.
They're so big. I mean, it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah,
but
I watched that video that you posted. I watched the video and I could see your climbing partner turn around and like was pointing at it. And I don't know if there was sound, but I had my sound turned off, so I didn't hear it. But it seemed like she was like saying, "Did you see that?" Like,
I can send you the raw video, the one I posted on Instagram. I think I covered it with Steve Miller's Fly Like an Eagle. Some of the language that was used was like, holy, God, those are the things that, that along with the, the hard climbing and the almost spiritual feeling you get from all that. Those are just like icing on the cake. When you have those experiences with the wildlife, like the eagles and even the mountain lions and stuff like that, it's just another layer of satisfaction, gratification. It's really cool.
Yeah. So we've touched on the wildlife and sort of the dangers of just climbing some of those peaks, but what about storms? Do you have any storm stories? Because we're touching on all the dangers, the potential dangers, but also the types of things that leave you with just this profound sense of like gratitude for having experienced it.
Yeah, there was it was summer before last. I took off to climb Mount Tabaguach over by Shavano near Salida, and on the trail, I caught up with these two Russian gals, and one of them was not so fast. We all summited, and then we were coming down, and again, this is way above tree line, and the clouds developed real quick, like they do during the end of July and August, the so-called monsoon season. And me and this the first girl, we were pretty experienced, obviously, and we knew like, hey, the clouds are coming in, we got to hustle down to tree line and get in the trees. And this third girl, she was quite a bit slower, and she kind of got in a electrified environment. Her hiking poles were like humming, and sparks were rolling off of them. And she said she could taste like pennies in her mouth, like copper.
Oh, geez.
And
Yeah.
and she made it, threw her poles down on the ground. That personally, I've been in some situations that were almost like that. I mean, I've been snowed on in July, in August, sleet, but I've always been really careful personally to read the forecast and done my
Mm-hmm.
best to not be in a situation like that. There's been close calls for me personally, like that was, but I saw it coming up, and we ran down to the trees. I've got a friend. She about 2 months ago was climbing. It's up by Loveland ski area. I think it's called Pettingill Peak, and the same thing happened with her and this other girl she was climbing with. The rocks started kind of humming and singing, as we call it, and her poles got real tingly, and they both got hit, but it wasn't really with the lightning bolt itself. It was like a static pop, and she actually has this
Mm-hmm.
on video. You could just hear the static and then hear a loud pop, and she like falls down with her phone in her hand recording it. It's like, oh my God, I got hit. And I guess at the moment initially she thought lightning struck her or whatnot, but it was just like a big static release. I have seen a couple of avalanches occur on some winter or early spring climbs. That's pretty scary. Me and my buddy Matt were on this ridge over about north of Leadville, climbing up, trying to summit on Drift Peak. The snow was really loaded, and there had been a lot of avalanche activity, which we watched for that also, like weather during that time of year. And we get on a certain part of the ridge, and Matt, he's from the Cascades, from the Pacific Northwest, so he's
Mm-hmm.
pretty well versed in things of that nature, glacier travel, avalanche, etc. And that part of the ridge we were on, it started sounding hollow under us with every footstep. And he's like, well, we better turn around. This is not good. So we turned around, and on our way down, in the basin to our left, which would have been our south, we saw a pretty good slide that had just happened. We could tell it was fresh. So we're like, okay, we made the right choice. We're headed down into Mayflower Gulch. And about 5 minutes later, we see an avalanche happen right under us on the ridge. And that just, we knew we made the right call then. And luckily, nobody got hurt. And it was just a pretty good sized slide, about the length of, a basketball court, maybe 5 or 6 feet thick. And it would have messed somebody up, pretty good. But it's kind of all part and parcel of the whole thing, the adventure and learning how to cope with situations the best you can, because you're going to kind of put yourself at risk frequently
Yeah.
doing these activities outdoors.
Yeah. It's like the more you do it, the more skill you acquire for
Absolutely,
doing
you
it. Yeah.
learn things. I've always been one to kind of, hasn't always been the best thing to learn things the hard way. And
Yeah.
and back to the avalanche thing, I am this winter going to take an avalanche safety course where you learn
Oh,
how to
good.
use all the equipment, the probe, the beacon, and
Yep.
the shovel, and all that.
They
Because
show you
I
how to test the
realized,
snow.
yeah, yeah, exactly. The one I'm going to do is up in Rocky Mountain National Park, I believe. I've become cognizant that the more I do this, the more I push the envelope. I'm putting myself in these situations more frequently. So that just harkens back to, educate yourself, learn what you should be doing, learn the signs, what to look for. And so you can mitigate a lot of these risks and concerns.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and your partners, it helps them too. And actually it helps you grow the group of people you climb with, because I've been turned down I've had some people ask me like, "Hey, you want to do this climb or that?" And I'll say, "Yeah, yeah." And they're like, "Well, do you have Avi One, which is this course?" And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
gonna lie, and I'll say, "No, I don't." And they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I get that people want to be with someone that can help them get out of trouble if it comes down to that. Yeah.
Do you have any, I guess, advice for other people your age who maybe are struggling to stay active? And what what would be your advice for someone, or even someone my age who wants to continue to stay active when they're 60? What
Yeah.
advice would you give us?
Oh gosh. First would be conquer the mental game. And what I mean by that is realize that okay, the years may have added up on you, but we've got a lot more control over our destiny, day to day and long term, than we realize we do. And by that, what I mean more control is control your daily life. Be as active as you can. Watch your diet. Try to be as healthy as you can. And the more you do on that, it'll just perpetuate more happiness mentally. And that they just perpetuate each other. Your mental, spiritual happiness along with your physical happiness. And once you conquer that, being healthy here and your mental aspect helping you be more healthy physically, you can do more outdoors. And again, that goodness just perpetuates the other two aspects, your mental, spiritual, and your physical health. You get the ball rolling then, and it just perpetuates into more joy and happiness. Don't give up on yourself. You got more control. You can affect yourself more than you think you can, and you've just got to do the act. You just got to do it, and you'll be really happy. Once you do that, that's kind of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Would you say it gets easier the more you do it?
Absolutely. It gets easier, and then you can do more challenging things, which, at least for me, you get more gratification and happiness from that. And again, back to the perpetual thing, it just, it kind of becomes a snowball effect. It gets easier and easier. So then you ramp up, maybe start out with class one hikes, a couple of miles to a pretty lake or whatever. And then after a few years, you're out there doing really sketchy stuff, what people would call it. And you don't have to, but if that's the direction you want to go, it just adds up into immense satisfaction. You can be healthier than maybe you think you can. You just have to do it. You got to put the phone down or turn the TV off and go outside. That's the
Yeah.
key
Awesome.
for sure.
So you've got one more 14er, right?
Yep, Little Bear.
And you're doing that next weekend. And you
Hopefully.
have how many of the Centennials left?
Okay, well, the 100 highest in Colorado, the Centennials, 58 of those are 14ers, of which I've done
Right.
57. The rest are really high, tall 13ers. I think I need to tally it up. I have it in a few weeks because I did another one last week and a few the weekend before.
You've
I
been
believe I'm
busy.
at 82 of the top 100 now. So
Wow.
maybe in another year. The last ones, though, I may end up hiring a guide. Dallas Peak, Jagged, and Sunlight Spire. Those are definite rope climbs, hardcore class five climbing. Vestal Peak is another one that's over south of Silverton. There's a ridge there called Wham Ridge. Would be best to have a guide for that for sure. It's just I don't have the pure rock climbing experience to put myself in that environment, by myself. Yeah. And
Right. Yeah.
and again, that just goes back to pushing the envelope, learning more skills, and get more joy out of it. Learning those skills and maybe be to where I don't have to have a guide eventually hired. But I will
Yeah.
for these, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So what else is there on your list that you want to achieve?
I for sure I want to go climb Mount Whitney and some of the California 14ers. I would love to go climb Rainier someday. Pico de Orizaba down in Mexico, Veracruz state. I want to do that. That's some solid glacier travel. It's about 18,500. I would love to do Aconcagua down in the Andes in Argentina. Cotopaxi, I want to climb. And I would love to climb someday something in the Alps, obviously, uh,
Yeah.
and go to the Tibetan Plateau. I've always wanted to do that. At least hike to Everest Base Camp. And
Yeah.
there's a couple of peaks that are affordable in the Himalayas that you can go climb. My thing right now is just the career turmoil at work. There's a lot of changes. And so these are things, maybe after I retire, you know. Now,
Yeah.
I'm talking about the Himalayas there. Now, prior to
Right.
that, the ones that are obtainable obviously be Whitney, Rainier. I do have a friend that did Denali last year. And those are things, though, that take several weeks and
Yeah.
really got to be up to snuff on your training, especially for like Denali,
Yeah.
because that's pretty much the peak that guys train on to go do Everest, or
Right.
Annapurna or K2. So
Yeah.
some are very lofty goals, some not so much. Again, just
Didn't
like
you have
developing,
you have a permit to do Whitney? Didn't you have a permit to do Whitney this
we
year?
had a permit for about the middle part of June this year. But again, they had about this past winter, the Sierras and Colorado as well, had probably 130, 140% of a normal snowfall.
Yeah.
And we kind of canceled because of that, because it would have added a lot of time, that just to access the portal. You
Right.
couldn't for a while, and it was going to be like an extra day of hiking and such. Now, I had a friend that went and did it about a month ago too, and she said it's just there's rocks all down on all the roads, rock fall. The roads are
Wow.
really a mess, lots of damage everywhere. And still, I mean, it was just instead of doing the 99 switchbacks, they just donned the crampons and pretty much just went straight up. And
Wow. Yeah, that was gonna be my other question is if you were gonna do the mountaineer route or the normal route.
well, our original plan was to do the standard, the one where you go up to the whatever the lake is called that most people camp at on the standard route. It'd be
Yeah, I
like at
think
least a 2-day deal. Now, personally, I would prefer the Mountaineers route, and that's what I want to do when I do it. That's back to progressing skills and learning and stuff. And again, back to the adrenaline thing. When you're perched, going straight up the face, and you look down, and you're on like a 50-degree angle, and there's no room for mistake, and you're learning how to use tools. When you combine that learning with just the adrenaline and the satisfaction from climbing these mountains, it all just comes together really nice, and it's a lot of fun. It's thrilling.
is there anything else you would like to add?
If you're seeking serenity, get outdoors. That's where we came from before we thrust ourselves in this urban environments that we're in, and that's where the answers are.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Cash. I appreciate you being on the Wild Minds series. I
Thank you so
appreciate it
much.
very much.
Thanks,
All
Tiff.
right.
I appreciate it. Anytime.
All right, Eric and I on top of Pyramid Peak. One of the more difficult peaks, for sure. Yes, we've got plenty of company. Mr. Goat and Junior. Hello, sir. No, you're not getting any of my urine today. I know that's what you want. Oh, look at that. There's the maroon bells in the shadow. What a day.